The market was loud, full of alien voices, strange smells, and blinking lights. Creatures of every kind shouted prices and offers, waving their goods in the air. But no one looked at stall 72, not anymore. It was pushed into a dark corner, hidden by rusty metal sheets and broken lights. She sat there, knees to chest, arms hugging her legs. Her body was covered in dirt and dust. She wore nothing but an old cloth, barely enough to hide her shame. Her skin was pale and bruised, thin lines running down from her collarbone. She didn't cry anymore, not after the first few days. A rope tied around her ankle kept her from running, but she didn't have the strength to run, even if it were gone. Aliens passed by and glanced at her with disgust or boredom. One vendor nearby shouted, "Hey, get a real deal here. Not that useless thing in the corner." Everyone laughed. She lowered her head further, trying to disappear. She didn't remember how long she had been there. Time passed in blinks. Light became dark, and dark became light. Food was thrown at her sometimes. Like trash, she ate quietly, never complaining, never speaking. Her voice was locked deep inside her chest. Lost long ago, the sign on her cage said, "Unwanted, clearance, 5 credits or trade." Even that was a joke now. No one wanted a broken alien girl with no beauty, no power, and no use. Some called her cursed. Others said she was half mad. But no one cared to ask her name, because no one believed she deserved one. One cold night, the wind blew strong through the metal stalls. Most vendors packed up and left. But stall 72 stayed open, because no one cared enough to close it. She sat, hugging herself tightly, her skin freezing. Her lips had turned blue, and her eyes were half closed. If she fell asleep now, maybe she wouldn't wake again. Maybe that was okay. Then footsteps, not like the others, heavier, slower, calm. She didn't lift her head, assuming it was another curious fool come to laugh at her. The footsteps stopped in front of her cage. Then silence. No laugh, no joke, no cruel word. She opened one eye and saw boots clean, dark leather, human style. Her heart jumped a little. She had seen humans before, powerful ones, rich ones, dangerous ones. They never stopped here. Why now? The man crouched down, his face now close to the bars. He looked older, with rough skin and tired eyes, but there was no disgust in his expression, just calm. He didn't speak for a while. He simply looked at her like she was something real, something important. She moved back slightly, afraid he might grab her, but he didn't. He slowly took off his thick coat and pushed it through the bars. "Here," he said softly, "you'll freeze." She stared at the coat like it was made of fire. Warm, soft, too good for her. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. Slowly, carefully, the moment the fabric touched her skin, her eyes filled with water. Not pain, not fear, just confusion. Why was he being kind? The vendor came rushing. Hey, you want that thing? Just take it. No one wants her." The human didn't answer right away. He looked at the girl, then back at the vendor. "What's her name?" he asked. The vendor shrugged. "Never gave her one. She doesn't talk. Probably broken." "She's not broken," the human said, his voice low and firm. "She's just been hurt too much." The vendor rolled his eyes. "Take her. She's free." The human stood up, unlocked the cage door with the key tied nearby. He stepped inside, picked up the girl gently, and wrapped the coat around her. She didn't fight, didn't speak, but for the first time she leaned her head on someone's chest. The beat of his heart felt like a lullaby. As he carried her through the market, everyone stared, some laughed, some whispered, but he didn't care. He walked slowly, carefully, holding her like she was precious. And the girl from stall 72 closed her eyes, not from pain, but from safety. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know where they were going, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to live to find out. Asterisk. The transport shuttle roared in the distance as Jack walked out of the market. He didn't look back, not at the staring aliens, not at the guards, only at the small girl in his arms, whose body felt as light as paper, Her head rested against his chest, her fingers gripping the edge of his coat like it was life itself. Jack had seen many things in his travels: war, wealth, cruelty, hope, but he had never seen eyes like hers. Eyes that looked empty, yet still searched for something. Like she hadn't given up completely, just didn't know how to ask for help anymore. When they reached the spaceport, the station guard blocked his way. "You bringing property through customs?" The guard grunted. "She's not property," Jack said calmly. The guard raised an eyebrow. "Then what is she?" Jack glanced down at the girl, now half asleep in his arms. "She's someone who deserves a second chance." The guard snorted, but waved him through. He brought her to a quiet room on his rented cargo ship. Not large, not fancy, just clean, warm, and private. He placed her gently on the padded bed and removed her rope. She didn't react, just curled into the blanket like a frightened kitten. Jack didn't speak much, only left a plate of soft food and warm water on the table. Then, he left her alone. He knew too well some kinds of wounds needed space to breathe. Hours passed. Jack sat in the control room, reviewing charts, but his mind kept going back to her. She hadn't spoken, hadn't even looked at him with focus. What had they done to her? How long had she been sitting there in that metal cage, invisible to everyone? A soft sound broke his thoughts, her feet padding across the floor. He turned, and there she stood in the doorway. His coat still wrapped around her like armor. She didn't say a word, just looked at the food. Jack nodded silently, then turned his chair so she wouldn't feel watched. She ate slowly, careful not to spill or waste a single bite. Every now and then, she glanced at him quick, unsure. Jack said nothing, just waited. When she was done, she placed the empty dish on the counter and stood still. Jack turned to her gently. "You want more?" She shook her head once, barely noticeable. Then, with effort, she lifted her finger and pointed at herself. She tapped her chest, then looked at him. Jack tilted his head. "Your name?" She blinked, then slowly shook her head. She didn't have one. That hit Jack harder than he expected. No name meant no identity, no past worth remembering. It meant she was treated like an object, not a person. He stood up, moved slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "How about I give you one?" he asked gently. She looked confused but curious. Jack smiled faintly. "You remind me of a star. Quiet, soft, but still shining." He opened his datapad and searched, then showed her a glowing picture of a blue star cluster. "This one's called Lyra," he said. Her lips parted slightly, not quite a smile, but not blank either. She pointed at it. "Lyra?" Jack asked again. She nodded, and just like that, the nameless girl became someone. Someone with a name. Jack turned to prepare a second plate of food, but when he came back, she had moved. She was now sitting on the floor, curled up, but closer to him than before. Her body still trembled, but not as violently. Her eyes watched him, not with fear this time, but something else, maybe trust, maybe hope. That night, he placed a soft mattress on the floor near his bed. She lay down without a word, still wrapped in his coat. In the darkness, he heard a whisper so soft he almost missed it. "Lyra." He turned, surprised, but said nothing, just smiled in the dark and whispered back, "Good night, Lyra." And for the first time since she could remember, she slept without crying, because someone had given her more than just warmth. He gave her a name. The door to the washroom slid open with a soft hum. Steam floated into the hallway like a soft cloud, carrying the scent of clean herbs and heat. Jack stepped out, drying his hands, and nodded toward the room. "It's ready," he said gently. Looking at Lyra, she stood still by the corner, clutching his oversized coat close to her thin body. Her glowing eyes flicked toward the doorway, uncertain. She had never seen a proper bathroom before, only cold metal buckets, dirty rags, and loud commands. Jack didn't move closer, didn't rush her. Instead, he placed a clean towel, a fresh set of clothes, and a soft brush on a nearby chair. "I'll be outside. No one will come in," he said, then walked away, closing the door behind him. Inside, Lyra took a shaky step forward. Warm light wrapped the room in a soft glow. A large tub half filled with steaming water waited quietly, almost inviting. She stared at it, wide-eyed, like she was looking at a miracle. Her fingers touched the edge of the tub. It wasn't sharp, it wasn't cold, it felt safe. With trembling hands, she slowly took off the coat and stepped in. The moment the water touched her skin, she gasped. Not from pain, but from shock. Warmth, real warmth. Not the fake heat of burning lights or sunbeams through a metal cage, but soft, gentle warmth that wrapped her body like a hug. She sank slowly into the water, tears rolling down her cheeks without permission. The dirt began to lift from her skin, like the past washing away every scar. Every mark told a story, but in this moment, she wasn't a story. She was just a girl. Lyra grabbed the soap bar Jack had placed on the side. She sniffed it. Lemons and flowers. Her hands worked slowly, almost afraid the scent might vanish. If she moved too fast, she ran the soap along her arms, her neck. Her legs, watching colors return to her skin. Pale silver tones replaced dull gray. For the first time, she looked at her own reflection in the shiny panel nearby, the girl staring. Back didn't look like someone from stall 72. No rags, no rope, no dust, just her, still thin, still tired, but alive. Her long white silver hair fell over her face as she rinsed it. She touched the strands, then picked up the brush. Unsure how to use it, she dragged it carefully through the knots, wincing once, then again. But she kept going, stroke after stroke, like she was rebuilding herself, one brush at a time. When she finally stepped out of the tub, she wrapped herself in the towel Jack left for her. It was thick and soft, like clouds hugging her skin. She stood in front of the clothes, a simple soft blue dress, likely stitched by hand. No metal pieces, no chains, no ugly tags, just something real to wear. When the door opened again, Jack didn't look directly at her. He stepped in with a small tray, hot tea and some sweet fruit. He paused when he saw her standing there in the new dress. His eyes softened, and he gave a small nod. "Looks like it fits," he said, voice low. But kind. Lyra looked down. Holding the fabric with both hands, she gave a small nod back, her first silent reply. He placed the tray on the bed and sat down across the room. "I didn't know what color you'd like," he said. She tilted her head slowly, then glanced at the blue dress. She pointed at it, then tapped her chest softly. It wasn't a word, but Jack understood. "This is me now." The room stayed quiet for a while, only the sound of the ship humming in the background. Lyra sipped the tea slowly, her hands shaking from more than just nerves. Her body was warm now, but her heart still carried frost from all those cold years. And yet, every time she looked at Jack, the ice melted a little more. Not because of the food or the bath, but because he never asked for anything. In return, he simply stayed. That night, Lyra walked toward her corner, but Jack stopped her. "There's space on the bed." "It's warmer here," he said. She hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat beside him on the edge, quiet. He pulled up the blanket and looked at the stars outside the window. "They say Earth has a sky full of these," he whispered. Lyra looked too, eyes wide with wonder. "Stars," she whispered, her first real word to him. Jack smiled. "Yeah, stars." And in that moment, Lyra felt something stronger than warmth. She felt human. Lyra sat by the window of the ship, her legs folded beneath her. A soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders, outside the glass. Stars drifted like glowing snowflakes in a sea of black. But she wasn't watching the stars. She was watching her own reflection. It had been 3 days since Jack brought her from the market. 3 days of warm food, soft clothes, and no pain. But still she hadn't spoken. Not a word beyond Lyra and stars. Jack didn't push her. He simply filled the silence with quiet stories about Earth. He told her about rivers and trees, about rain that kissed the skin. He told her how snow felt on his face when he was a child. Sometimes she closed her eyes while he spoke, not to sleep, but to picture those places in her mind. She listened, always, but never spoke, never smiled, and never cried again either. Jack had noticed. He noticed everything. How she flinched when the ship's engine hissed too loud. How she carefully folded her blanket every morning like a ritual. How she checked the lock on the door twice before sleeping. And how she stared at her hands like she didn't know they were hers. On the fourth night, he brought out an old wooden music box. It was small, carved with symbols Lyra didn't understand. He turned the key, and the soft sound of piano notes filled the room. Lyra froze. She had never heard such a gentle sound before. "It was my sister's," Jack said. "She used to believe music could heal anything." Lyra touched the box lightly with her fingertips, then pulled her hand back, as if she feared it might break or she might. Jack smiled. "You can keep it near your bed, if you want." She didn't answer, but that night, the box rested beside her pillow, and when the song played again softly before sleep, she didn't move away. The next morning, Lyra found a chalkboard near the table. It was small, like something for a child. Jack placed it there with a single word written on it, tea. Beside it, a white piece of chalk and a second cup sat waiting. Lyra stared at it for a long time, then picked up the chalk, slowly. Her hand shook as she wrote a single letter, Y. She wiped it away quickly, scared it was wrong. Then she wrote, yes, and looked at him with wide eyes. Jack didn't smile too wide. He didn't want to scare her. But inside, his heart leapt. It was her first real conversation. Even if silent, he poured tea gently, and she sat across from him, and that morning, they shared something bigger than a meal. They shared progress. But Lyra still refused to speak aloud. No matter how kind Jack was, her voice stayed buried. She used the board to write single words. Cold, more, safe, why, and once, alone. That one stayed on the board for a long time. Jack read it, looked at her, and wrote back, not anymore. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She tossed under the blanket, eyes wide. Haunted by a past she never invited, she tiptoed across the room and stood by Jack's bed. He was still awake, reading an old Earth novel. He looked up, surprised. She didn't speak, but held out the chalkboard. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, "Why me?" Jack sat up slowly. He took the board, looked at it, then placed it aside. "You were the only one no one wanted," he said softly. "But that didn't make you worthless." She blinked, unsure. "You looked like someone waiting to disappear." He added, "And I couldn't let that happen." Silence again. Her hands clenched the blanket. Then she whispered, so soft he barely heard, "What if I'm already gone?" Jack looked her in the eyes, serious, calm, human. Then, "I'll help you come back," he said. "I'll wait, no matter how long it takes." For the first time since she left the market, Lyra looked at him. Really looked, and something inside her cracked. Not in pain, but in relief. She sat beside him that night. Not to ask more questions, just to sit, just to feel human. Her voice hadn't fully returned, but she no longer refused it. And Jack? He never asked her to be more than she was. He only stayed close, and slowly. Lyra began to believe. Maybe silence was not the end. Maybe it was just the beginning. The room was quiet, but not cold. The hum of the ship's engine gave it a heartbeat. Lyra sat by the table, legs tucked under her, staring at the chalkboard. Her fingers tapped the side of her cup, a soft rhythm only she could hear. Jack was nearby, reading a datapad, pretending not to watch her. But every second, his eyes flicked up, checking, waiting. Not for words, he had learned not to expect those, but for signs. Signs that she was healing. Signs that she was still with him, not just in body, but in soul. That morning, Lyra had eaten without shaking. She even poured water for both of them without spilling a drop. Jack had smiled and said, "Thank you." She had only nodded, but it was different now. There was awareness in her eyes, but what happened next, he wasn't ready for. Lyra picked up the chalk slowly. She wrote one word, name, then circled it twice. She looked at Jack, head tilted questioning, curious. Brave. Jack blinked, setting his datapad down. You want to know my name? She nodded once, her silver white hair falling over her face. He smiled and tapped his chest. Jack. Then he pointed at her. You are Lyra. She stared at him. Then back at the chalkboard, she erased the circle, then wrote beneath it. Why Jack? Jack leaned back in the chair and chuckled softly. It's just my name. My mom picked it. She said it sounded strong. Lyra tilted her head again, like she was trying to figure out if he was joking. Then she wrote again. Strong means safe? Jack nodded, serious now. Sometimes, he said. But strong also means choosing. Kindness, even when you could walk away. She looked at him for a long time. Her lips parted slightly like she wanted to say something. But instead, she held the chalk tightly in her hand. So tight that it snapped. Jack didn't move. He didn't say, it's okay, or reach out too fast. He just sat and waited. Then it happened. A soft sound left Lyra's mouth, not a full word. Just a syllable. Broken like the chalk in her hand. Gee, yeah. Jack's breath caught in his chest. He didn't say a word, didn't rush her. Lyra looked terrified, like she had done something wrong. But Jack smiled gently. That's me. Jack, she tried again, her voice thin like paper. Jack, it felt like the room stopped breathing. Jack stood up slowly, walked over, and knelt beside her. You don't have to force it, he said softly, but her hands gripped the blanket near her legs, and her lips trembled. I was a knot. She struggled. Jack touched her hand lightly. It's okay. But she didn't stop. Her words came out broken, shaking but real. I was not supposed to talk. Talking was punished. The silence that followed was heavy. Jack closed his eyes for a second, then opened them and looked straight into hers. Not here, he said. No more punishment. Not ever again. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, silent, falling like raindrops on old stone. She tried to wipe them, but Jack gently stopped her. You're allowed to cry, he said. You're allowed to speak. And scream, and laugh. Everything. She looked at him, this strange, kind human who didn't treat her like a problem to fix. And for the first time, she whispered, I don't know how to be anything. Jack smiled softly. Then let's figure it out together. That night, Lyra didn't sleep on the floor. She didn't stay in the corner or press against the wall like she used to. She climbed into the bed beside Jack, not to hide, but to be near. She clutched the little music box in her hand. It didn't play, but her mind was already full of a new song. Her own voice, small, soft, uncertain, but hers, and that broke Jack's heart, not because it was sad, but because it was beautiful. Asterisk, it had been a quiet week aboard Jack's ship. The stars passed slowly outside the windows. Lyra spoke a little, now small, careful words, like stepping stones across a river. She helped cook. She folded her blanket with care, and sometimes she even smiled. Jack didn't ask about her past. He never asked where she came from, who hurt her, or why she had no name. He only looked forward, offering her a tomorrow worth walking into. But the universe wasn't done with Lyra, and the past, no matter how far it seemed, was still watching. It began when Jack docked at Station Elos 9. He needed fuel, supplies, and a new coolant pipe. Lyra didn't want to leave the ship, and Jack didn't push her. He simply said, lock the door. Only open if it's me. She nodded, wearing her soft blue dress and hugging the music box close. She watched the docking tunnel seal shut, then sat by the window. Hours passed, and she waited patiently until she heard it. Clang, clang, clang. Metal boots on the floor, heavy and wrong. Not Jack's steps, too loud. Too many. Lyra's chest tightened. She rushed to the door panel and checked the monitor. 3 armored aliens stood outside the ship, scanning the hull. One of them barked a command in a tongue she hadn't heard in years, but she understood every word. Check the hold. Look for the stolen girl. If she's here, we take her. The buyer wants her back. Her heart stopped by her. That word still made her sick. Her legs moved on their own. She locked the backup hatch, blocked the air vents, shut off lights. Then she crawled under the bed, clutching the music box and holding her breath. Memories returned like lightning. Chains, collars, the metal whip, the cage. The smell of burning metal and alien breath close to her face. The voice that whispered, "You speak, you bleed." Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She pressed the music box to her chest and mouthed one word, "Jack." Meanwhile, Jack was returning with a heavy bag in one hand. He felt it the moment he turned the corner. Guards, wrong ones, pretending to be station security. He dropped the bag and ran, heart pounding. The docking bay was filled with noise now, alarms, arguing voices. And then, a voice crackled on the station speaker. Unauthorized access to human vessel. Ship quarantine. Requested. Jack pulled out his ID badge. Earth military officer, retired. He flashed it at the guards blocking the ramp. "I need to get to that ship. Now." They looked confused for a second, until Jack barked, "That girl is under Earth protection. Touch her, and I'll have your hands in cuffs by nightfall." That was all it took. They stepped aside, unsure. But Jack didn't wait. He ran in. Gun drawn, eyes burning. Inside, Lyra still didn't move. She heard voices, doors opening. Someone walking in then. Silence, then a voice, soft and familiar. "Lyra, it's me." She didn't answer. Too scared to speak. Then she heard it again, even softer. "Little star." "I'm here." Her breath caught. She crawled out, trembling, her body shivering. Jack stood there, arms open, face full of worry. She dropped the box and ran into him. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "I didn't talk. I didn't talk. I didn't talk." Jack held her tighter than ever. "I know," he said. "You don't have to explain. I'm here now. They won't take you." She clung to him like a lifeline, sobbing against his chest, and for the first time she wasn't afraid of her tears. Later that night, Jack sent a message to Earth Command. It read, "Targeted attempt to reclaim a rescued slave under false authority. Girl's ID chip shows signs of tampering. I'm requesting full protection and witness relocation status." He ended the message with one sentence. "She is not property. She is Lyra." Lyra sat by the window again, holding her music box. Her eyes red, her hands still shaking. Jack sat beside her, wordless but close. "They were going to take me again," she said softly. Jack nodded. "But they didn't. And they won't. Not while I'm alive." She looked at him, tears in her glowing eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Jack smiled gently. "Because no one else did." And in that moment, Lyra believed him, not because he promised, but because he fought, not with guns alone, but with love. And now, she wasn't just a girl who escaped the market. She was someone worth protecting. The stars outside the ship moved slower now. Or maybe it only felt that way because peace for once wasn't running away. It had been 2 weeks since the incident at Station Elos 9. 2 weeks since Lyra almost disappeared back into the nightmare. But she hadn't, because this time, someone came for her. Jack stood at the ship's control panel, adjusting the course for Earth's outer colony. Beside him, Lyra sat on a crate, swinging her legs gently like a child testing new freedom. Her hair was brushed neatly, tucked behind her ears, and her new dress, sunlight yellow, moved softly when she turned her head to look at him. "Almost there," Jack said, tapping the screen. "It's not Earth, but it's safe. Lots of nature. Quiet towns. Honest people." Lyra nodded slowly, her voice now stronger than ever. "Do they look at you like you're broken?" Jack turned, surprised by the question. He walked over, crouched beside her and said, "Maybe at first. But then they listen, and they learn." Lyra looked down, playing with the hem of her dress. "I want to try," she whispered, "to be someone. Not just someone rescued." Jack smiled. "You already are." They landed the next day on a green, cloud-covered colony called Everlyn. It was a quiet place, where grass glowed softly in the dark and birds had feathers like glass. Jack had a small house waiting, a gift from old military friends, 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, 1 garden, and a porch that faced the stars. Lyra walked through the front door slowly. There were no chains, no locks, no metal tags on the wall, only a soft bed, a warm rug, and wind chimes made from crystal shells. She touched them gently, and they sang a sweet tune. Music. But alive, she whispered. Jack handed her a notebook and pencil. You can write anything. Feelings, dreams, recipes, bad jokes, whatever you want. Lyra stared at the blank pages like they were a portal, then wrote her name on the first line, Lyra. The second line, I exist. Days passed softly, like pages turning in a peaceful book. Jack worked in the garden during the mornings. Lyra helped planting seeds, brushing soil from her hands, laughing when worms surprised her. She still had bad dreams sometimes, but now she spoke through them, and every time. Jack was there to remind her she was safe. She began visiting the town with him. Some aliens stared, but no one mocked. She wore dresses now blue, green, yellow, and once even purple. And when a local merchant said, "That color suits you," she smiled, not a forced smile, not one to hide fear, but a smile that reached her eyes one evening. Jack lit a small campfire in the backyard. The stars were out, glowing across the sky like whispers of the past. Lyra brought 2 cups of tea, sat beside him, and asked, "Do you miss Earth?" Jack shrugged. "Sometimes, but I think this is home now." She looked into the flames for a moment, then said softly, "Do you think I could help others? Like me?" Jack blinked, taken by surprise. "You want to rescue someone?" She shook her head. "No. I want to stay with someone who's scared like I was, so they don't sit alone, so they know someone sees them." Jack looked at her, the girl who once didn't speak, didn't move, didn't hope, and now she dreamed of saving someone else. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I think that's the bravest thing I've ever heard." Later that night, Lyra wrote in her notebook. The page read, "I used to be invisible. Now I plant flowers. I used to be afraid of voices. Now I teach my own to sing. I used to be nothing. Now I am me." She set the notebook aside and lay down. The music box still rested on the shelf above her bed, silent but warm. And as she drifted into sleep, she whispered one last word to the stars outside. "Thank you."